Good morning, I think it is. Yes, as the observant have spotted, I'm not Simon Bird, as Pat said. I'm David Williams. I'm Simon Bird's deputy and his younger, better-looking alter ego. I deputise for him quite a lot, and I'm dreaming of the day when someone doesn't laugh at that because they just accept that that's true. We are going to talk about ports and logistics, but first I do have to give Simon Bird's apologies. We do have a major national politician that's in the Port of Grimsby today that we only learned about yesterday, so I am very much a last-minute stand-in because I was asked yesterday evening to step in to do this, so be gentle with me. But we do have a really distinguished panel that I'll introduce in a moment. But I do want to say something about why actually it's really important, and I'm really delighted that we do have a ports and logistics panel at this conference, because it's really a hugely important part of the economy of this part of the world and a driver of economic growth, not simply for the port sector itself, but as an enabler for growth for all other sectors as well, because we are at the core of what we do in the port sector and the logistics sectors, enablers of the growth as a service provider. We are living in some very exciting times in the ports here in the Humber, but probably worth just saying, about 20% of the UK's trade is brought in by ports of the Humber. For ABP, that's about 17% of the nation's trade is brought in. And when you pick that out by sector, it's about 10% of the nation's energy, 25% of the nation's fuel, about a third of the nation's construction supplies, roughly a third of the nation's agricultural supplies, and so on and so forth. There isn't a sector within the UK economy which isn't fairly heavily reliant on the work that goes on within the Humber. And when you consider that, all right, we'd employ something in the region of about 1,200 directly employed jobs, but actually when you take in wider supply chains and others, it's about 42,000 jobs that are directly reliant on what goes on in the Humber ports. We are involved in all the businesses that are around this table today and are enablers of that. And what's particularly exciting that's going on in the Humber, and a really good example of how we're playing in sectors beyond ports and logistics. We've heard a lot of talk already about energy and how exciting times we live in here. The Humber 2030 vision that was launched in Parliament last week has 18 projects in there that represent about £15 billion worth of private sector investment into implying in carbon capture, green energy supply, and other things that are going to decarbonise our economy in the area. The one thing that all of those 18 projects have in common is they're either existing or future customers of ABP. We are an enabler to make other things happen, and that's the thing that's particularly exciting. But I can't, before I introduce the panel, I can't leave without talking about the three ports, which is the other really exciting venture that we are currently engaged in. So ABP have been the driving force that's helped to bring together a really dynamic partnership and that's come together to help put forward the Freeport. People will know that the Humber hasn't always had a brilliant track record of being able to collaborate together. The Freeport is a really good example of where it can work and work really well. So the four local authorities, the two from the south bank of the Humber and the two from the north bank, two universities and a collection of private businesses have come together with a single vision that will grow something in the region of around 7,000 jobs to the area as a conservative estimate and help to decarbonise what we do as well. We are in the final stages of the setup, I think is perhaps the best way to describe what state of being that we're currently in. So final business cases with the government. We've had asked to make some tweaks to it and some amendments, which we are currently doing. We're expecting to get the final approval from the government to get underway, either by Christmas or very, very early in January. And that will hopefully be the moment that we can start to get some of these really good things up and underway. So I'm going to introduce the first speaker from our panel, who is Catherine York, who's here to speak from Aura Catapult and talk about the offshore wind sector. I will just say that Catherine and I spent all of last week, in North Carolina with a number of other delegates talking about the offshore wind sector that we have here in the UK and helping to show them the way, just to underline the fact how important and how game-changing offshore wind has been for the rest of the world. Catherine.
Thank you. The purpose of the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult is to increase the benefit to the UK economy of our growing renewable energy sector. Now, in terms of offshore wind, actually we've not done as well as we could have done. We've got a fantastic number of wind turbines. We've got huge numbers of people employed in operating and maintaining them. But we did miss the boat to an extent in the number of jobs and the opportunities we could have brought to the country in terms of the manufacturing in those early stages, partly because of the pressures of moving very quickly to get the technology installed. Now, we haven't missed out completely because there's a whole new wave of opportunity coming in terms of floating offshore wind. And these schemes are so large that no single port is actually capable of supporting all of them on their own. So the opportunities will be spread around the country for both manufacturing and for the assembly and installation. But where we really have grown our capability and where we continue to lead the world is in terms of the operations and maintenance, because that's homegrown. It has to be, and it's here for the long term, for the 25 or 50 years lifespan of the wind farm. And there are smaller barriers to entry. So at ORE Catapult, that's where we really see the great opportunity for the UK to continue to demonstrate expertise and to continue to export. David alluded to the North Carolina opportunities, and the people there are so excited about what can happen and so keen to learn from the stumbling way that we've worked our way through this new industry. Now, Catapult is based all around the UK in a number of different strategic locations, depending on the industry. But we are in Grimsby for the Operations and Maintenance Centre of Excellence, because Grimsby is at the heart of operations and maintenance for all of the UK offshore wind activities. We have the largest port. We have the two largest operators and developers of wind farms here with Ørsted and RWE, and they're not the only ones. And the supply chain continues to grow within the area. I'm going to talk to you briefly about two particular projects that we hope will be enabling a lot more activity within the supply chain, and they do relate back to ports and logistics. The first one is around decarbonisation, which is a matter that I think is close to the hearts of all of the speakers and hopefully all of the audience here today. And that's around clean maritime. So although we have a fantastic clean and green industry, the dirty secret is that we have to burn marine diesel to get people out to do the maintenance on the turbines. The work that we've been doing is to look at what's required to get alternative fuel provision, whether that's supporting projects to get vessels to be able to charge directly from turbines and overcoming the regulatory and technical and engineering issues there, or whether it's looking at electrolysis and having hydrogen provisions onshore or offshore. So that's a big area that's going to be coming. And another one, which I have to qualify with saying subject to contract, we are very grateful to the support that we've hoped to receive from the LEP under the Clean Growth Accelerator. And this is around a 5G testbed, because one of the areas we're looking at is how we can make the industry safer and more efficient, how you can get people away from dirty, dangerous and repetitive tasks by using robotic systems. So the 5G testbed, which will incorporate Grimsby Dock and also a partner wind farm, will enable people with new products, new innovative autonomous systems to demonstrate them at field scale, whether that's things that are operating in the air, on the surface of the water, or below the water. Surveying is an area that's continuing to grow. As you hear of the expansion of offshore wind, there's more and more requirement for people to be looking at what's going on under the sea. And there's more opportunity for hazards to come from that, and equally, as we move to more autonomous systems, we can go to greener fuels because these things are largely designed to be run on electricity or supported by solar power. So there are masses of opportunities, and I see and hear from today lots of opportunities for links between, because Catapult wants to draw in companies that aren't currently operating within the sector. So if you have expertise in what we've heard about the agri-robotics, or in defence, or in the existing thermal power chain, or in petrochemicals, then there will be opportunities in the programs we run, support businesses to actually overcome the barriers, understand the procurement supply chain, and find their way into the renewable sector. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Catherine. So you're privileged to witness an industry first now, in that someone from ABP is about to welcome someone from Able. Those of you with long memories, we get on very well these days, which is all good. It's my pleasure to introduce Marcus Walker, who is here from Able Marine UK, who's going to talk about the developments then.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the invite. I want to very much endorse the last speaker's comments around the pace with which we've responded to the huge opportunity for offshore wind in Europe and the UK, and the need to rapidly increase that pace as we move forward, given the government's new commitments to move beyond 40 gigawatts of wind to 50 gigawatts of wind. We really do need to increase pace if we are to seize the opportunities and jobs of growth and investment for the UK. For those of you that are not familiar with the Able Marine Energy Park, it's on the south bank of the River Humber, which itself has the last undeveloped deepwater estuary in Europe. And that's been long recognised as a national asset. A fact that was not lost in Able UK, who as far back as the 1990s started to commence a programme of land acquisitions with a view at the time to developing a deepwater port, a brand new deepwater port on the Humber. It's acquired over 2,000 acres, and the land acquisition was largely completed by 2013. However, something changed that approach very significantly, and that was in 2009. The government, through the Crown Estate, launched its £100 billion investment for offshore wind, primarily in the North Sea. And I'm not sure that anybody or many people really grasp the significance of that investment, because in terms of scale, it actually dwarfed the 1960s and 70s motorway programme, even dwarfed the Victorian Railway Canal building programme. It was a huge investment. And Able said at the time that unless we seize this opportunity, we will end up paying for this in euros. But if we get it right, then we can actually create a renaissance across manufacturing in the north of England. So following the announcement, Able UK changed its plans significantly and submitted a development consent order for an offshore wind energy park. Because it was absolutely clear that when you looked up and down the east coast, the congested ports, it was impossible with those existing port structures to provide facilities on the scale, on the sheer scale that were required to deliver an offshore wind programme. So we set about providing a brand new opportunity. I mean, when in 2014, we look back now, the offshore wind turbines were around about 3.6 megs in size. Today, they're actually 15 megawatts in size, with proposals to be 20 megawatts. And just the enormous amount of land take to deliver what needs to be really a manufacturing, assembly and installation plant needs literally hundreds of hectares. And that doesn't exist anywhere thus far in the UK. And unless those facilities are provided, then, as I say, those OEMs who are largely overseas and in mainland Europe will never land in significant numbers in the UK. Presently, the largest offshore wind manufacturing park is actually in Esbjerg, around 127 hectares. The Able Marine Energy Park proposes to be 365 hectares of land with more than 1,000 metres of dedicated deepwater quays. So in essence, what we seek to provide is something on the production of a car plant, an assembly plant, but actually on the scale of producing aeroplanes and bigger. Preparing such a sizable port, which has never hitherto existed on anywhere in the UK, is a significant challenge, as you can imagine. It's around a £500 million development. Able UK are well on with that since we received our development consent order. But it's a significant project indeed. For that reason, we're incredibly thankful to the Greater Lincolnshire LEP for having the foresight to lead on the preparation of the Humber Freeport, which is now almost up and running. And for Able, that will make a huge difference in attracting original engineering manufacturers onto the site. We have more than 200 acres of the site allocated for Freeport status, which will give us huge tax incentives and help in attracting the manufacturers as we move forward. In addition, the Lincolnshire LEP also gave us great support, provided a 4.3 million grant to de-risk all of the area from flooding with the Killingham Marshes drainage scheme. An £11 million scheme which will not only protect AMET from flooding and climate change in the future, but also protect the two refineries of Phillips 66 and Prax, as well as the Searow port and other businesses in the area. So where we are now in next steps is we've reclaimed almost 188 acres of land and development for the Marine Energy Park, and we continue to develop that further. When it's completed, there'll be 3,000 direct jobs on the site, with many, many more in the supply chain behind it. And we think that now, with the next stage to develop the keys, that Greater Lincolnshire really does stand on the cusp of being at the centre, not just of the UK, but of the entire Europe, of being at the head of the offshore wind manufacturing centre for decades to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Our next speaker is Emmeline Saville, who, in addition to being one of the LEP's Careers Hub Enterprise Advisors and having over 30 years' experience in the industry, also has one of the best titles I've ever heard as the Route Agency and Border Compliance Director at DFDS Seaways. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you. I think I need a long title to go with my long name, that's what it is. Thank you, and it's great to be able to talk today. As David said at the beginning, ports and logistics support economic growth, not just in the area, but in the UK-wide. And what I'm going to talk a little bit about is some of those challenges to support that economic growth, particularly in the careers. When I started in ports some 30 plus years ago, it was something I did by chance. We're one of these little magical areas of business that nobody really knows much about. If you ask a child now, how do they get their Lego, for example? Oh, Amazon delivers it. But there's a whole industry behind that that supports that. So what DFDS are looking to do now in our area is link in with schools and colleges to promote the industry. We've got so many opportunities, but we're struggling to get the next generation of port workers from anything from claims handlers, salespeople, the crane drivers, all that sort of thing is a huge amount of opportunities for our local students and families around there. So you can come around the Immingham area, you can get up to the port gate, and that's it. Nobody knows what goes on behind those doors. So we're doing a lot. We're partnering, we're enterprise advisors, we go with schools. And even to the port, I support a local school that's not a mainstream school. And it's not about what we can get from the school, it's about how we can support those schools as well. And by supporting those, we're attracting the next generation of individuals to come into our area to look at innovation. You know, the ports industry, the marine sector, is a little bit behind on that green agenda. We need more focus on that. We need more innovation. And the only way we can do that is by attracting people into those areas and get some more expertise on there. DFDS offers opportunities for over 500 people in the Immingham area alone. But you ask people who we are, they think we're DFS. You deliver sofas, you know. You ask somebody on the other side, sort of in Manchester, where's Immingham? Where's that? Immingham is very, very little known. We say it's the biggest port that nobody's heard of. And as David said, we've got great opportunities, and actually Immingham is the biggest port in the UK in terms of tonnage and the fourth in terms of unitised cargo. So we've got huge opportunities here. There are expansions going on. So it's about, we need to bring more people into the industry and support that with that. And that will then support the economic growth within the local area. And I think that's all from me. I think I'm probably the one that's going to go less time. But that's what we're here for. We're here, we want to promote the business. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emma. And as Emma says, Immingham really is the place to be. It may not be hot on everyone's list of places nationally, but actually it is the place that things are going on. ABP are investing about £400 million in the next 2 years alone across the Humber, but over 300 million of that is in the Port of Immingham, because there are a number of different projects that are all coming together, and it is a game changer, very much as the name of this this panel suggests. So I'm going to open it up for questions for anyone who has any questions around the floor. If we've got some microphones roving around. I can't see very well from here. No questions at all? Okay, well I'll go in with one to keep it going in case anyone wants to think about them. So obviously we have got a lot to be doing over the course of the next few years to drive forward the innovations, the investments we want, but we're going to need the skills in order to do that. How are we going to do that? Anyone want to have a go? Skills? Oh, I'm looking blank faces now. Go on, Emma.
I don't know. Yeah, I'll take that. I think that's such a good question that nobody's yet been able to answer. The skill sets in getting people into the industry, because it's not something that's nationally recognised. The port sector is not how we train people and how we get those skills, we teach those. So it's how we get them to be taught before we get to that basis. And the biggest thing is going out into the education environment, into schools and colleges, and promoting that side of it. I think that's the only way we can do it. We have a responsibility in the industry to promote our sector. I think we missed an opportunity in the wake of COVID, where we could have done a lot more in promoting and how we kept the country moving in terms of food and all that side of things. So I think we need to step up more from our side of things.
Thanks. I think that the local skills sector are excellent at adapting to challenges. In my former roles, I've been on the board of Catch, I've also been on the board of North Lindsey College, and I've also worked with a number of other institutions. And I think that they are incredibly adept at responding to immediate opportunities and incredibly great at supporting shifts in employment opportunities. But I think what really is missing is having that national strategy, and offshore wind being but one. When we began to see the opportunities, you know, we rapidly had to transform and look at managing existing opportunities to meld that into what we needed. So the University Technical College in Scunthorpe was but one response. But without having national plans where we can sensibly foresee into the future what the needs are of an area, then I think that forever we'll just be responding rather than actually managing change in a much more productive way.
So as well as the need that we have, which I think David Talbot mentioned as a massive shortage around electrical and mechanical skills, huge opportunities there. There are also others which require more transferable skills, in particular computing expertise. So either as an expert manipulator of numbers and modeler of situations, or actually getting deep into the programming. And so then we've got two obstacles. One is firing people up about the fact they could be a computer scientist, they could be a software coder or a hardware engineer. And the other is then saying, and this is how it fits into our industry. So you either have to go at them, getting them fired up and excited about, in my case, renewable energy, and then say, but if you don't want to deal with spanners, this is a way in. If you don't want to deal with computers, this is a different way in. Or you have to go for the more strategic, these are the skills that you could use in almost any industry, and then we're drawing from a larger pool. One quick thing, though, is that we're working on a project with the UTC in Scunthorpe that are hosting a facility for primary school children who can actually come and learn some of the design technology skills, whether that's computer programming or whether that's building things out of Meccano, understanding the principles of science, or launching rockets up onto the school roof. So that's just recently been launched and is starting to be expanded in North Lincolnshire and North East, but it's available to any schools that are interested.
I can see Pat hovering. You hovering to come on, right? I will open up any more. Oh, we have a question at the back.
Thank you. It's Dan Lewin from STEM Learning. I've met Catherine on that UTC project. This was not so much a question, but more almost an offer of support. We can provide clusters and funded opportunities to bring schools together around contextualising not the discrete careers education, but where what you guys on the stage are talking about can fit into specific subject delivery. So it's an offer of support to be able to frame what you want in skills into the classroom, and would love to open that conversation with you.
Sounds like a great offer. Come and see us afterwards. I think it's where we are.